It's me. It's me. It's me. It's all me, man. It's my fault. I know. I know. Too many assignments. Too many this. It's just the way it is, right? All right, we're back. We are COMP123 in the summer 2019 semester at Centennial, and we're week 12, part 3 of our broadcast. We're going to talk an intro to Entity Framework today. We kind of did a preview or an intro a little bit on Monday's recording, right? But I'm going to go over in details with you guys today. So what the heck is an Entity Framework anyway? So I want you to think about an Entity Framework or the Entity Framework from Microsoft as an object relational mapper, like it says here. What is an object relational mapper? Think about this as a wrapper that wraps around your database. It gives you a way of connecting to your database with code. All right, that's what it does. That's how I think about it. How I think of it. It was written by developers for developers, just like Link. Link and Entity Framework. It's like I always look at that, and it's like a labor of love, right? That they say, hey, I'm a developer. I want to be able to connect to a database, and I don't want to kill myself, right? I don't want to work so hard. People connect databases all the time. Why should I make my own connection, my own way every single time? It doesn't make any sense, right? And what about if I want to have access to do things like sorting and searching, and I want to use Link with my database, right? I don't want to work hard for doing this. I want it to be something that is there for me to use, something that I can tap into, as opposed to making something from new. Now, I want to tell you something. The Entity Framework version I'm going to show you is Entity Framework version 6, right? For COMP229, which is this other course you're doing for enterprise computing equivalent, right? And it's going to teach you .NET Core. There is Entity Framework Core. It's a different version, an updated version of Entity Framework that we're using today. But some of the stuff that you're going to see is very similar to the stuff that I'm going to show you today. So please, when you get to COMP229, which you will at some point, you might recall it. You might say, oh yeah, Entity Framework, Tom talked about that. That's good. If you can remember something from this, it'll be good for you. So really good things about Entity Framework is development time is reduced, which is why I highlighted that thing. Why? Because think about what I can do here. If I have a set of wrappers or a set of classes that allow me to connect to the database, it does a couple things for me. One, it makes me super organized, right? And two, I can create entities, right? And my entities that I'm creating are usually related to the database tables. So I have a database table, like for example my products table for dollar computers that I'm getting guys to do. I want to connect to that database table with my entity framework, not ADO.NET. ADO.NET is the old version of connecting it. It used to be just this, ADO.NET and then database, right? And then your application. There's nothing in between. So Entity Framework came in and squeezed itself in between as an extra framework to help. Now one thing to note is that Entity Framework is not included by default with your application. You have to actually include it using NuGet Package Manager. Or, I'm going to show you today, once I connect to it, it includes itself. It does it automatically. All right, so that's what Entity Framework is all about. There's a couple of approaches that were created. So there's some instances out there in the real world where the database already exists. And when the database already exists, and if you don't feel like coding, you just want a connection, then you can use something called the database first approach. However, most times the database, exists, right? But we want to get, we're going to create a class that models after the table, right? So we have a bunch of tables in the database. In this case, for us, because we are not a database class, right? We're a C# class, right? We only have one table. I'm not giving you a bunch of other relationships. For example, in dollar computers, they could have services that they offer, right? Like repair services, virus removal services, installation services, integration services, upgrade services, whatever, right? And you can have that in a table, right? Services, products, right? And I might have other things, another table with other stuff, accessories or mobile stuff or whatever. Maybe instead of just making a products table, I might have a computer products table, and there might be another kind of products table that I sell as well. And what if I have 20 more of those tables? It can be quite complex to create every single class. So imagine every time I make a table, I want a container class So when I go from one form to the other, I hold data in my container class to pass it to the next form. That can be really tedious for me to create all those or my classes, right? It's hard. And so what it does is entity data, the entity data model and using entity framework allows me to automatically generate my class from the table. So I have my table in my database. I don't want to do any coding, and I want it to be perfect. Entity framework. It just makes my class, right? It's a beautiful thing. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to do this code first from database. However, there's two other approaches I got to mention, right? Code first, which means that there's no database at all. Guys, very rare case. There's no database. I mean, you go to a real company, almost every company that I've ever been to has a database of some kind or more, right? That's number one. But if you don't have a database, let's say, or if you're making your own little database for your own application, right? Then you could use something called the code first approach. So the other way around, which is I don't have a table and I make my class first, and from my class structure, the table is created in my database. Okay? Or if you're not a coder, but you're a designer, because there are some designers out there, database designers, right? They can visually create the relationships between one table and another. They make a table visually in a visual designer, right? And then they make a bunch of other tables and they connect the tables together with these connection lines. And they can create many-to-many relationships, one-to-many relationships, all that stuff, right? They visually create it. And then they click a couple buttons using entity framework, and all of a sudden your class is created and your data and your tables created, and all the tables are created automatically right away, right? It's a beautiful thing if you're a designer. But for us, we only have one table and we're not going to create it. It's already created for us. We just want to tap into it. So the code first from database approach is the best approach for us. And I detail them here for your viewing. So if you look through here, I've got some information about database first approach. We're not going to use that one. Code first approach means you're making code, but there's no database. Model first approach, you're visually designing, and this is the one we want to use. We have an existing database, but we want to create our classes from the existing database. And from an EF workflow perspective, and you can see that I got my little cursor here, you can go to Microsoft's site and it'll give you this exact situation where it says, well, what kind of, I don't know which one I want to choose, what option, which approach, how do I choose the approach? Well, if you're not sure, then what do you want to do? You want to code? Then you're either going to go do the code first approach or code first from database, right? Are you a designer and do you have a database? Well, then you can do a model first approach. If you're a designer and you have, I have access to an existing database, well, then I can do the database first approach. So this is a way of helping you out. The way we do it is whenever we want to include the entity framework runtime, we have to add it through NuGet Package Manager. Now, if you haven't heard what NuGet Package Manager is, it's like a way of adding a plugin into your application, or another, what's another way of saying it? Another namespace, another application programming interface someone else has written. I want to include it into my application, right? And the way I can do that is I can use NuGet Package Manager. There's other package managers out there. For example, for the web, there's Node Package Manager, which is a very common one. There's also Yarn and a bunch of other ones. But for Visual Studio, for creating Windows applications, we have NuGet Package Manager. Actually, NuGet Package Manager, if you're doing JavaScript, who's doing JavaScript course, COMP123 right now? Some of you might be doing that. You might be being forced to use Visual Studio. I don't know who would make you do that, but let's suppose someone made you use Visual Studio, right? And let's suppose someone says you need to use jQuery. You could go up to jQuery and download jQuery manually for yourself, or you can go to NuGet Package Manager, say NuGet Package Manager for my solution, add jQuery, and boom, it downloads and installs jQuery inside of your application, and then you just have to reference it. So NuGet Package Manager is really useful. I've been using it for a while, whenever I have to use it for Windows programming. But typically, it has a lot of stuff that you can download and install, and it integrates nicely into your application.
Each time we need to install it again, right? Because one
Yes,
you
yeah.
install the framework, and in the new project you need to install it.
Yes, so the question was, do I have to install it again? And the answer is yes. The package only exists per project, or per solution, actually, is the way to say it, right? So if I include a reference to the entity framework from my project, it's only for that project. The rest, if I do it again, I have to do it again. I have to go back and download it from NuGet Package Manager. It's the same if you were going to do a new web application, right? I want to do jQuery for one, doesn't mean I get it for all. Maybe I don't need it for the second one. Maybe I'm going to do, vanilla JavaScript for the next one. So therefore, I don't need it from NuGet Package Manager. All right, so what we want to do here in our case is we want to reverse engineer the model. And I have to mention why we call it model. It's called the entity data model, right? And people are confused. When we say model, they're like, what? What's a model, right? It's a class. That's what it is. It's a class that describes a table, right? However, what we want to do is create a context. And the context is all the tables in the database. I want to make a database context. So imagine dollar computers. Right now it only has one product table, right? So its context, I could call it the dollar computer context. My entire database, dollar computers, right? But I only have one model. It's the product model, right? The model, the class that connects to the products table. That's what the model is. And when we get the model, we talk about this design pattern, which I mentioned before, called model view controller. It's a design pattern, right? Think about this. I could break up my code and my application into different parts. I can compartmentalize. I can break it down into different concerns, so we say, right? One of them would be the view, right? I want a really beautiful designer. Let's say she or he knows how to make a wonderful set of forms, right? They know how to use the best user experience, and to enhance user experience, they know how to set the form up, make it look nice, and all that kind of stuff, right? So when to increase the user experience, I'm going to give it to a qualified designer who knows about how color works, how layout works, and the best user interface. They can make a great user interface, right? That doesn't mean that the developer makes the great user interface. It may be the designer does that, right? So I can give that work to somebody else. And then I might have a person who's really great with database. He's a database administrator, or she is, and she wants to connect to database. She wants to make sure, or he wants to make sure that the database connects properly and that the data in the database is represented properly. So that is someone who deals with the model, right? Or a team that deals with the model. And then you can break out the controller. Now, normally, I got to tell you that in this case, for Windows Forms, the controller is the code behind file that sits behind the view, right? However, you can break that up if you want to. I can create another partial class that I can include inside of my controllers folder. Speaking of folders, right? We want to start today assignment number 5. If you haven't started assignment number 5, we're going to start it from scratch today, right? So there's only one person I think that's finished assignment 5 in this class. Anyone else finish? Anyone else start? Okay, good. I'm going to start for you today. So you may not have to start this, but I'm going to start it again. I'm going to give you an example. And I want to talk about how to do this, right? So let's do this together. So I'm going to start assignment number 5. Let me go. So I'm going to go back to Visual Studio. And I kind of did this on Monday, but I'm going to do it again today because I recorded it one time and I'll record it one more time now. All right? All right, so again, I want to make a file new project. I want to do a Windows Forms application. It's going to go in the right place, and I'm going to call this again probably COMP123 in the summer 2019 semester, and I'm probably going to call it A5, right? And normally I would use my student ID, so whatever my student ID is. But in this case, because I've recorded it differently, I've already done this project. I'm going to call this Section A, right? And this is the template for Section A. Section A, we'll call it Section A example, all right? But in your case, you wouldn't put that. You would put like -A5 and your student ID. I recommend something like that. If you didn't do that already, and if you finish your application, zip it up like that, all right? So when you zip it up, it looks like it comes from you, not some generic person. I'm going to press OK here, and it's going to do the regular things that we normally do. All right, so here's what I want to do. I want to organize my application. So for Lab 11, what I've asked you guys to do, let's take a look at Lab 11 for me, right? So again, we're going to go up here, and if I look at Labs, and I go to week 12, you can see that under labs I have this thing called Lab 11, right? And it's due the end of the week, Friday, right? I made it due Friday because there was somebody that's not available this morning. I was not available this morning to get together with my section B. What's wrong? It looks like a lot of stuff. It's not a lot of stuff. No, it's not. It's actually, all it does is says this. It says, hey, start assignment 5 by creating all the forms required. That's what it says. That's actually lab 11. I'm paying you to start assignment 5, right? And it says then add all the required UI elements to the forms, right, as per assignment 5 instructions. Keep in mind the assignment 5 does not specify the width and height of your forms. Use appropriate sizes, okay? For example, the default form size for font is like 8 or 7.8 or something. Don't use 8. It's too small. Use 12. That makes more sense, right? Now, if you really wanted to use 8, I mean, I guess I would accept it because I don't have a requirement of what the size is. If you really wanted to use 6, I probably could accept it, but I mean, it's terrible. I probably would give you a mark off and say, like, I can't read it, right? You know, but I recommend make it appropriate. So that's what I recommend for this one, right? I also recommend designing your UI first by sketching out your user interface. However, I'm not making it required. I recommend it because it would be good practice for you to sketch out how all your forms should look. I'm not going to do that here today, but I want you to do that if you can. And then ensure that the user, whoever it is, if you're going to hand it in for Friday, whether it works or not, it shouldn't work. It's just, all it is me looking at all the forms. I should be able to navigate, that's the user, that's me. I should be able to navigate from one form to the other, even if nothing works, just so I can see the user interface. That's it. If you've done that for Friday, that's worth 1% of your final grade, and it's a good start for your assignment 5. That's what I'm looking for you guys to do. So it's actually in your interest to do this lab, right? Like it was for lab 10, which people didn't do for whatever reason, right? It was in your good interest to do it, so you get bonus marks. That's why I did lab 10 in the first place, right? It's not because I wanted to make it irrelevant, right? Submission details, that's what this is. I know you looked at it, you're like, oh my God, there's so much to do in lab 10. It's not a lot. It's just making your assignment, right? A zip archive of the first iteration of assignment 5. But however, if you're done, I have a person who's done in the class, thank you. You get free marks, just hand it in and you're good, right? I'll mark you, you'll get this lab and you'll get marks for your assignment 2. Who cares, right? And then a link to your project files on GitHub. Now, this link is going to be the exact same link as your assignment 5, right? That's what it should be. So I should be able to go here and then later on, when you hand in your assignment 2 weeks from now, you're good to go. Or 2 weeks from Friday, I mean, you're good to go. Because that's when your assignment 5 is due, the very last day of class. Let's start, and then we'll talk about editing framework. So here's my form 1. And my form 1, let's say I'm going to start in order. I'm going to make this form 1 start form, right? That's what the first form is. So let's rename this thing. Here's my rename. I'm going to rename this form start form, right? And press OK. And then it's going to say, do you want to redo it? I do. But imagine if I have like 20 forms, 30 forms, 50 forms, 100 forms. That's like 100 forms in my Solution Explorer. It's really hard to look at, guys. We need some organization. And so what I recommend for you guys right away is make a folder called Views or Forms, something, right? Make another folder. Let's do that together. So I'm going to make a new folder here in my solution. Right click. I'm going to add a new folder, and we're going to call this folder Views, just to go with the whole model, views, and controllers things. There's going to be a models folder, a views folder, and a controllers folder. For now, the controllers folder is going to be empty. Later on, we'll try and add some controllers. All right, so right click, we're going to make a new folder. Let's just set this up. We'll call it models. And then right click, add a new folder. We're going to call it controllers. Think about the controllers as the logic behind your application. Right now, the logic is tied to our form, which is okay. So that's what I have. What I want to do is I want to take my start form, right? I want to take this start form, this one, and I want to drag it into my views folder, like this. Drag and drop. Start form into views. Right? Now, it's not required, see I say this stuff, it's not required that you do this for assignment 5. However, it's nice if you do it for assignment 5. Because it makes your life easier, right? In some ways. In some ways it makes your life a little bit more complex. But you may want to do some work to make it better. Let me show you what I mean. So in your start form, if I press F7 now, right? Notice that it says that namespace is COMP123 S2019 A5 section A example, which is the name of your project, but you're inside the views folder. So what it really should say is section A example dot views. So let's change that to dot views, right?
Is it mandatory or just naming convention?
I recommend it because when you put it inside the views folder, you should have a views namespace. It should be changed. If I do that, I get this error, right? And the reason why it's getting this error is because in the code behind file on the start form designer, you can notice that also this one has to be dot views. And if you do that, then you're good to go. So all I've done is change my namespace to dot views. Okay, I got a problem now. I got a huge problem. In my program.cs, when I include this thing, right, there is no more start form. Start form will not work anymore, right? Because start form doesn't exist. Start form is inside a views folder. And if the right thing to do is before I even code anything is just go here and add the views folder as a using, right? Using, what it does is it adds this views folder, right? And now it's going to work like normal. So why do I do this? To make my life easier or more organized and more compartmentalized. That's why. Okay?
Do we have that for the test?
For the test, we'll see. We're going to make our test together. We're going to build up our we're going to build up our template together for the test, and you'll know everything for the test if you come. Not this Friday, but next Friday. If you don't come next Friday, it's going to be a surprise, right? Yeah.
So the view, how do you do the using again?
All I did was I went to here, and there's a little underline, and I had the if I take away the usings here, I'll do it here. Let's do it like this. So let's suppose I didn't have this. It'll come up with a little underline. Then this little light bulb will come up, and you just choose add the using statement. That's all it does. It does it for you. All right. So now that I have this, of course I don't want to do it this way. I want to do it our way, which is public static class program. And inside the public static class program, I want to do a public static start form, right? Which is going to be called start form. And then down in here, between these two lines here, I'm going to do start form. By the way, if it gives you the wrong one, let's say I give you this one, and you don't want to accept that one, you can press escape from the IntelliSense, right? You don't have to accept that. Start form is equal to a new start form. And this instantiates it, and what I want to do now is take this reference and put it inside here. Now start form is not going to be your first form. It's going to be splash form, because if you look at the requirements, right? If you look at the requirements for start form, look, start form says create a splash screen. That's going to be your first form. So we need splash form, we need start form, we need select form, right? We need product info form, we need order form. Those are the ones we need. Let's make them all right now. Right? So again, now to help us, I'm going to right click on views this time. And it'll do all that namespacing for me. Watch. Add new form, right? And it's going to say, okay, what do I want this thing to be called? This is going to be called the splash form, right? I want this one. I want to add that. And notice it goes right inside the views folder. And if I go F7, you can see automatically it's going to the views. My namespace is views, right? Which is good. I didn't have to do that. It just did it because I put it inside the right form. All right? I'm just going to get rid of this stuff so that way. I'm just going to keep the program open. All right? The other one I need is I want a select form. So let's add a new form. We'll call this select form. Select form. And we'll also add in a product info form. New form. That's how I would start. I would start with all the forms first. Someone asked me earlier, and I kind of answered, and I'll do it again with you guys. Product info form.cs. There we go. And then I also have a order form. New form. Order form. Okay, so I got order form, product. We're missing one more form. The about form for about box. There's two ways to do that. You can make your own, or I can go add. I showed you how to do this already. I told you needed this for assignment number 5. A new item I want to go with about box. And instead of an about box, I'm just going to call this about form. There we go. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 forms. Right? That's how many you should have. And what I want to do, there's two ways to handle this that I talked about earlier in one of my lectures, which was, if you really want to do it like the long way, you could definitely add all the forms here in a row, or you can use a dictionary. For assignment 5, I'm not going to comment on how bad your code is and say, oh my gosh, you made one form after the other. And I'm not going to comment on, wow, that was awesome that you used a dictionary. I'll leave it to you, right? However, I recommend something a little bit better than this, so you don't have to remember. Because now I have 6 forms to remember, right? Not 2. But let's add them all in. So public, static, all right, and we'll call this the splash form, and then public, static, and we'll call this the next one, which is going to be the select form. I'll quickly put them all in, just 6 of them, right? So product info form, and I'm using the whole camel case for the objects. Oh. And the last one will be the about form. And it's going to be an error. About form always gives me an error. Why? Because about form, unfortunately, it says the inconsistent accessibility. If you look at the about form itself, I press F7, you can see that it's not a public partial class. We'll just make it that though. Make it public. Alright? That's all you have to do to make that accessible. And if I go back to program, you can see that it's okay now. Alright, so I've got all these, and I'm just going to do the same thing I did over here, but one at a time. Now, again, some people commented on this. Why don't I just do this all at once? I could. I'm not going to. I like to have a section that I instantiate. Or sorry, what we want to do is like these are public or static members. That's what they are, right? And yes, I could have named this differently from a naming convention. I could have said S underscore static start form, S underscore splash form. S underscore means static, right? But I didn't do that here. And inside here I could do the rest. So here's a quick way of doing it. You could do like copy paste all this and then just get rid of splash form, but I mean, or you just can copy paste this just to make your life easier. You can say like, well, you know, splash form is equal to new splash form. And you don't have to put a new and the equal sign. I mean, I'm trying to save some time. It's not going to save you much. And this one would be the, again, it's still pretty small, right? So select form is equal to a new select form, and the rest. Ha. Look at this. It's because I didn't copy paste. Haha. See what happens if you don't copy paste? And the last one, which is about form, is equal to about form. That's it, right? So those are all done. So that's what I've done here. I've just copy pasted all those, right? And you can see that's what we normally done. So here I declare them, and here I instantiate them. I mean, okay, again, if you watch this thing, you're going to say, well, why? Why don't I instantiate them when I need them, right? Yes, you could do that, but this way it allows me to go backwards and forwards, and I don't have to set up a master form. I could do that. I can make a master form that's like the super form, and the super form has parent and child relationships and all this other stuff. I don't need that. There's another form for that. Alright, so I've got all my forms here, and I can make them go, but I want to start with start form. Normally I start with splash form. That's what I really start with. And I really want to test select form. So what I use this for a lot of times is the one I want to start with. I'll put select form in there, even though I know that splash form will be my first form. And a lot of times also what I want to do is order this one in the order that I want. If I'm going to do this way, do it this way, order it in the right order. Right? Should be something like this. Splash form. Same thing with over here. I mean, I know it's being like, there's no need for it. Truly, it doesn't matter the order. But I'm just doing it because I feel like we're being organized. Because this is the order that it's going to happen in. Alright? So select form is what I want to look at, and I want to connect to my entity framework here, right? Are you with me? So we're making assignment 5. All we've done is made all the forms are completely blank. We haven't done any work on them whatsoever. They're just containers for your work. The only one that has some content is the about form, which is, it came from Microsoft. It came from Microsoft. The creature from the Black Lagoon. Alright, are we good? Can I continue? Let's move on. I want to add a connection to my database. Now, did we talk together about how to import your database from using SQL Server Management Studio? You guys may have not done that.
You showed us how to create a new database.
But I never told you how to import a new database, right? Oh, let's do it together, right? I actually covered that in another video, but I'll do it again just for you guys, because you guys didn't have it, right? So again, notice how I have in my SQL Server Objects Explorer, I actually have this local DB, and underneath that I have databases and I have $computers. I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to delete this database, right? So no more $computers database. It's gone, right? And I want to add a new one, but I'm not going to do it here in Visual Studio. What I'm actually going to do is use the other link that I gave you. If you go up to eCentennial, and if you go to PowerPoints, under week 12, I gave you guys this SQL Server Management Studio link. Okay? So now, please download SQL Server Management Studio. It doesn't take long. If you go to this link, it actually goes to here. Microsoft provides SQL Server Management Studio for free. I think I've covered this already, but I'm just going to tell you that you'd have to go here, download this thing, and when you do, you install it. Now, you don't have to have Visual Studio closed for this one because it's a different application. Okay? Let me know when you're done. I'll wait for a second. Still downloading? How big is it?
500 megabytes.
500 megabytes for 2 seconds work, right? It really is 2 seconds work.
It's around 50 megabytes.
Wow, everyone's trying to download it here at the same time, right?
620 is done. 620 will be over.
Which was it?
620? No, don't say that. That'll be too long. Which one was it? It's this one. It's if you go up on eCentennial, right? If you go up on eCentennial, you can see that on the top here. You can see SQL Server Management Studio up here, right? You gotta click this link under PowerPoints week 12. Huh? Week 12. PowerPoints week 12. PowerPoints week 12. How good are you guys going? You guys doing it? Are you guys done? 15 minutes. You too? I'm gonna continue, guys, and then I'm gonna continue, and then you guys can see it, right? Because it doesn't make sense. I already have it. So if you look here, I want to bring up my SQL Server Management Studio, and it looks like this, right? And when you're done, good. It'll come up like this, and it'll ask you to connect to your database. It'll actually say, hey, what database engine do you want to connect to? And I want to connect to LocalDB, MS SQL LocalDB, what we've done before. And then press connect. If I press connect, I'm going to get a list of all my databases. Yay, I need to create a container database called $computers. I need to do this, right? So I'm going to right click on databases. I'm going to go new database. I'm going to say $computers. Please spell it correctly or else it will never work for you. $computers, then press OK. And then it creates an empty database. Okay, now with this empty database, I gave you guys an SQL file. How close are you? 1 minute? Alright. I'm going to open up my SQL file. So the SQL file I gave you, SQL file, was from week 11 if I'm not wrong. Right? Week 11 I gave you this $computers SQL file, yeah? Are you guys with me? Is it done downloading yet? How much time do you have left?
show me the I will start like another one.
Just 1 minute, but it's lying.
Well, here's what you can do for the meantime. Do this for the meantime while you're waiting, okay? Go up on dollarcomputers.sql, wherever you have it, and open it with your favorite editor. You can open it with edit, like this. Here's my edit. Or, if you're like me and you like Visual Studio Code, I'm going to right click and open with code. And any other editor is fine, alright? So open with code does this. This is all your data. Notice there's a lot of data in here, and I don't care about this. So all this is data. Right? Notice it says 255. That's how big the end varchar is. Each of these things gives you 255 characters of space. Okay? That's what it does. And if I scroll all the way down, this stuff, notice it says alter database $computers. That's why I need you to create a $computers database. It won't create it. Right? Are we good? Did you download SQL Server Management Studio yet?
Going.
What do you mean it's going?
I don't know where, but it's going.
Isn't it done yet?
300 megabytes so far.
How about you guys? Is it done? You're done, huh?
I'm trying from Chrome.
Mine isn't set up.
You're in setup?
Yeah.
Wow, you're good. You're faster than everybody else up here, right? How about you? You done? You're awesome. Yes. You're awesome. Alright, so then what you do is you take all this, take a look at this, I copy all this, right? I go back to my $computers, I right click, and I go new query. And inside my query, it's going to make a new T-SQL query, right? That's what this is. And I paste it in here like this. And then all I need to do is click this little execute button for 500 megabytes. Because it took you 500 megabytes in 15 minutes or whatever it is. But for me, it takes me 2 minutes, not even a minute to do this thing. If I click the execute button, it does boom, and it's done. And then if I want to look at $computers, I'm not joking. If I look at $computers and I go to, well, let's take a look at, in my table, I have this DBO products table, right? And if I right click here and I go select top 1000, I can see all my data. See? And this is where I want to get you to. So again, the way I did this was pretty simple. I just used SQL Server Management Studio to connect to LocalDB, MS SQL LocalDB. I created a new database called $computers. I right-clicked and went new query. That's what I did, new query. And then I copied everything from my SQL file that I opened up in my editor into here and pressed execute. And we're done, guys. That's how long it takes for us to do our database.
So, $computer 500 megabytes, basically all the SQL commands to create.
Yes. Well, you know what? Let me tell you this. There's a much easier way. If you had Visual Studio Professional, right, which we do not. Most of us have Community Edition, right? Professional actually includes some tools to do it all inside Visual Studio, right? You can import a database and all that stuff. But we don't have Professional. Most of us have Visual Studio Community Edition. And there's no easier way to do it than this. This is just an easy way to do it. Huh? It's fine, right? It's easier this way. Honestly, it is. You can do it with Visual Studio, but you can do it here too, right? So, and by the way, if you're going to do any kind of database, having SQL Server Management Studio is not a bad thing to have, right? That means if you connect this to Azure or some other server in the future, or if you have an old server that you want to export, like some other database you want to export, you can do that through here. It's actually quite good, right? So, like I said, it's kind of a good server. Are you done yet?
No, never mind. I'll watch the video.
Are you guys all good? Anyone else not good? Are you guys all good?
Still installing.
Still installing? You're way ahead of me. And how about these guys in the middle? You guys all done? Yes? No? I see no's and yeses. I'm gonna move on, okay? I gotta show you how to do this, and then I know. She's giving me the lip. She's like, don't move on, right? All right. Anyways, but if I go back, I'll come back to this in a second, okay? If I go back to Visual Studio now, right? Here's my Visual Studio, and I need to refresh this database, right? Because inside here I've added my $computers database, right? It should appear now. And inside my $computers database, I have this DBO products table. I have it. It's there, right? And I have it inside Visual Studio. This is good. This is what I needed. All right, so here is where finally we get to entity framework. Are you ready? I'll do this again, all right? But here's how it goes. I want to right-click on my models folder. Right-click. I'm going to add a new item, and I'm going to go to Data, and I'm going to click on ADO.NET Entity Data Model on the top. What this is going to do, because I didn't go to NuGet Package Manager, it's going to go to NuGet, download the Entity Framework for me, install it as a reference, all in one step, right? Now it says model, and people are fooled by this. They're like, model, what do I put here? You know, it's a model. Think about this now, right? I'm making a bunch of models. I could leave it as model, entity data model, whatever. But really what I'm doing is, I'm creating a context. That's what I'm doing. This thing here that I'm making this model is actually my database context. So what I could call this, if I'm really smart, is $computers context. That's what it is. For all of $computers, right? Because I might have more than one table. Each table is the model that I'm using, right? So let's do this. So I'm going to call this $computers context. That's what it should be called, right? And then I'm going to click add. It's going to take me to here. And guess what I'm going to choose? I'm going to choose this one, code first from database. Code first from database, what it's going to do is it's going to do what I said. It's going to look at the database, and it's going to create the class automatically for me, right? I'm going to click next. It's looking for a connection. I'm going to make a new connection. I'm going to click SQL Server and uncheck this and press continue. And then I'm going to put in that string. So localDB /MS SQL localDB. And then if I click this little arrow, I can click $computers. There's my connection. I'm going to click OK. And it's going to say, I want to make a new connection. It's going to say $computers context. But I don't want this. I want it to make it called $computers connection. That's what it is. It's a connection string. I'm just calling it something. And notice what it says. It says, I'm going to save my connection string inside of my app.config, which is a file that's right here, right? Inside my XML file. It's going to reference my connection string right here. And then I'm going to click next. And it's going to bring me to my tables. And it's going to say, hey, what table do you want? Well, there's only one of them, the products table. That's it. And I'm going to click select finish. And what this is going to do, it's going to go out, grab entity framework, install it, right? And then when it's finished installing, notice entity framework has been included in my references, right? And if I go here under models, I have this thing called $computers context, as well as a products model. Here's my products model, right? And my friends, products is a good name. Product is a good name, but I like it capitalized. That's just me. So I'm going to right click here and rename to product with a capital P. When I do it here inside Solution Explorer and press enter, it's going to ask me, do I want to make the changes to my reference? So I'm going to say yes, and it's going to change the name here too, in my class. Now it's exactly what I wanted. I don't want to create this crazy class. This is a huge container class. Look how many fields it has. Guys, why would I ever want to do this? Never, right? What if I get it wrong? What if I forget something? What if? Imagine I have to go through the database and go, okay, I have an ID. Okay, I have a manufacturer. Okay, I have a model. Okay, I have a RAM type. Okay, forget it. And what if it was even longer than this? This is like small. What if I had like, I don't know, 200 fields in a table, and I had 5 tables, and each table had like 50 to 100 fields, and I have to make different classes. This is crazy. This is why Entity Framework exists, guys, to make our life easier, right? And it's perfect. Are you with me?
Okay, sure.
So when we change something in the database, we need to regenerate the database framework like this one, right?
if you need to change anything in your table, you need to regenerate your this thing. Yes. And there's a way of migration. There's something called there's a migration you can do where you migrate your code to match the data table. You did? Someone wrote this themselves somehow. I don't know why, right? But yeah, but you know what? I like his initiative. I have to tell you that, you got good initiative. I'm really happy that you finished your assignment. But yeah, I mean, obviously we can do it easier, right?
I think we should give him another assignment. Keep him busy.
What? I'm being told I should give you another assignment now. Another one. Right? Okay, no, I'm not going to do that to the guy. Poor guy. He should be rewarded, not made to suffer more, right? So. Right. So you're gonna have to watch the video. All right. So are you with me now? See what I did? So all I did was I went through and I connected to the entity data framework. However, here's something that Dollar Computers context. It did something here too. I got to mention this. Two things. One, it creates a name for my connection. So here's the connection that I'm connecting to, right? Next thing is, I also have something else. I have this public virtual DB set. What this does is it says, hey, I have a products table here. I'm going to make a collection of product called products. This is what this is. This is collections, right? And it's a generic collection because it can take whatever kind of table I want. So first I create my product table, my product class, and then I insert it into this DB set. Understood? It's pretty cool, actually, what it does. It's like a list, exactly. Right?
Generic.
So that's what this does. Alright, cool. So now that I've got this connection, right, I have a product. I need to instantiate this product inside my program, right? However, when I go back to program, and I go to the top, and I want to instantiate my product, I go public static, and I want to say product, and we'll call it product. I'm going to get this error because guess what? It's in another folder, which means I need to install a using statement up here to look inside my models folder. Right? Because my product, which is this one, right? Notice the namespace is whatever my name of my project is, .models. All right? So that's why I did what I did here. And then I just instantiate it just like normal. I just do product is equal to a new product. And now we have our product class that we can use to move the entire product that we're going to get from our database from one form to the other. Right? I don't have to work hard anymore and make that crazy class. Hey guys, by the way, I know some people, for whatever reason, not just because my friend is anxious to finish assignment 5, but there's going to be someone else out there who's going to say, I just want to make my own class, and I don't want to do the entity data framework or whatever, right? That's up to you. If you really don't want to do it, I mean, it's pretty crazy, and it's not going to satisfy the requirements of the assignment, because if you look at assignment number 5's requirements, let's look there, it tells you that for your select form, you must use the entity framework here for 2 marks. It tells you, right, on 2C. So it says either LocalDB or Microsoft Azure. Don't do this. That's Microsoft Azure. I mean, you have to have a connection to Azure, and then it won't work here locally, and then bad things will happen. Please don't do it. Just do LocalDB. I'm fine. All right. And by the way, in order for me to mark your assignment 5, you must use the same database as me. I told you guys this before. I'll tell the other classes too. Because if you use a different database that's not called Dollar Computers, it will never run on my machine. If you make your own database called something else, called, I don't know, Tom Computers, right? And then I try to access Tom Computers and say, I can't access Tom Computers, thank you very much. I don't know what you mean, right? Because I don't have Tom Computers, only you do, right? Or whatever you want to call it. All right, so this is Entity Framework. It tells you to do this, and it also says, hey, I want to use the products table as a data source. That's what it says for the data review. That's another mark, right? That's another mark. These two things, this one, C and E, have to do with the entity framework. You cannot do E without entity framework. You'll lose marks if you try and do it a different way. Alright? So you must use entity framework here. Okay, so how do we do this? How do we do this? Well, let's go one thing at a time. First thing, whenever I want to use the entity framework, right, I want to think about where I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it in my, under views, on my select form, right? Remember select form? Remember select form, by the way, I'm not telling you what to do, how big it is. I recommend though that you make it a minimum of 12 point. So I'm going to go to select form. I'm going to go to font, and I'm recommending 12 point for font. Okay? And I recommend also that the form at minimum should be 800 by 600, if not 1024 by 768. I'm not going to show 1024 by 768 because of my magnification. All right? So it's just going to be, for me, 800 by 600 is what I'm going to set it to. Just so we can see it together, like this. All right? Excellent. Also, I've given you some examples of what the form should look like. So if you scroll down, you don't have to do it this way, but notice that there's no control box, no X, no maximize, no minimize, all right? So I'm going to take the control box away. I'm not even reading the requirements. I'm just looking at the example here, and I know this has to be the case. So I'm going to go back to my Visual Studio here, and I'm just going to take away the control box. So where it says control box, I'm going to set that to false. I know that's what I have to do. I know. Also, chances are I won't let you, size up the form. It'll be bad. So I don't want my form border style to be sizable. I want it to be fixed single. Please do that. And then the last thing I want to do is make my start position equal to center screen. I think that's important to do. Now I want to add another toolbox. I want to go to my toolbox. I want to go to data, and I want to take my data grid view and drag it across. And when I do this, let's make it so it's wide enough. Here we go. By the way, here's a question for you. Do you think you'll be penalized, so I'll take marks off, for using a layout? No. Use a layout if you want. Make it so it's easy for you guys. You can make a layout your stuff exactly how you want, and that's what it might be good for you to do. That's why I say, go through the whole design process if you want to. Sketch out what your form is going to look like beforehand. If you want it to look different than my examples, because I don't tell you what to do. I just say add this, add that, add this. I didn't tell you it has to be this many things, this much width and this height and a font size of 20. I didn't say that in this case. Right? So I know that I probably want something to be like this big, like this, around this size. But guess what? I don't have this. I don't have a data context for this. And here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to go here and just type in, well, first of all, I want to get rid of these. I don't want to go here and go add necessarily the project data source the way we did it before. All right? However, I do want to click add project data source. Let's just do it differently now. Let's do this. This is new for you. So maybe you want to watch this one. So remember, I have entity framework now, and I want to connect to it with the entity framework. All right? I don't want to connect to it with the old ADO.NET way of doing things. That's the old way, right? This is the new way, newer way. All right? I want to click Add Project Data Source, and instead of choosing database, no, it's object that I want to connect to, right? Why? I already have an object in my database, or in my form that I've done, right? I've created a context, right? So I want to click on Object and click Next. This is going to take me here. And inside of my entity framework, that's not good. And notice that there's also this part, and that's not good, right? In fact, I'm missing a reference. I can add a reference to my project, right? And if you notice in my solution, I don't have a reference to my project in here because it's not going to come up. Here's my assemblies, right? I don't have this framework or whatever. I can't do it. I want to do this. I want to add a the assembly that I want, right? And I don't want to uncheck this. This is bad, right? But notice that my project assembly doesn't come up with this. I don't see my data grid view here, right? Here's my data grid view. I don't see inside here in my Solution Explorer, even though I have this $computers context, I don't see it come up. Let's be honest, right? This is bad. So what else can I do? I want to, first of all, reassess. So this one here, it's not going to be called my data grid view. It's going to be called something like my product data grid view. I also want to double click on the load form, right? So the load part of the form, double click on this part. And what I want to do here is in this select form load event, this is where I want to load up my data grid view, right? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say using, and this is important, var db is equal to a new $computers connection, context, $computers context. Notice it doesn't come up because I don't have a reference. Look at this. I have to use this using COMP123 section example models. I need to do this, right? Oops. I need to do this. If I do this, I just added like a reference. Does that mean that in my design side I have another option? If I go here and then go to here and here and here, object and here, does that give me another option? No, unfortunately it does not. I would like it to. What it should be giving me is a reference to my object that's here, right? And this is one reason why it might do that. Because if I click start, it builds my model for the first time. It builds everything out. I need to build stuff out. Here's something also. I can't close this off. I've got to go here and click stop because I don't do it. Let me try that again. Sometimes I build my model, and I come back to here and press add data source, go to object and click next, and then I have 3. Why is that? Because I've built my project for the first time. Once I build my project, it becomes available to me. And this is the one I want up here where it says section A example. If I go to here, and if I look at all these things, you can see that there's one that says models, and then I can see product, right? And that's the data source that I want, right? And I could only get that if I built my project for the first time. I'm going to press finish here. Now I have this. You can see that it comes through. I want to reference this a little differently. So remember how we set it up. We're going to go to properties. Here's my properties. By the way, it's not going to show anything if I just do this. It's not enough. That's just I've just put together a product binding data source. That's all I've done, right? I need it though. So I need to do a couple things. One, I don't want to allow any resize columns. I don't want to allow that. I want to set that to false. I want to set that the resize rows is false. Just like before, all the regular stuff. I want to auto size columns mode. I want to set this to displayed cells. And the same thing goes for rows. So it's going to set things up properly. I'm going to keep going. So I'm going to show you all the things that I recommend to you. It doesn't tell you to do all this in your instructions, but I recommend it, right? And then, okay, well, I want my thing to be read-only. So that is a requirement, so it's true. It's got to be read-only, okay? And then, if you scroll down, you can see that I have selection mode. I recommend making selection mode full row select. Full row select for this thing, right? Because that's what will allow me to select the whole row. I'm going to keep going. And that is pretty much, I think, most of everything. I'm not sure if I missed anything. I probably did not, but I recommend this, at least. Now you can see that it's good. Now if I run it, it's not going to, what kind of data is it going to give me? Nothing. Why? I've just created the data set, right? The data set actually does this. It does a couple things here. One, it creates my columns for me, and it gets ready. That's all it's doing. It's getting ready. I'm ready for you, Tom. That's what it's saying, right? Here's what I need to do, though. I need to load the data. And the way to do it with the entity data framework the right way is to go back to selectform.cs, and inside this little using statement that I made, right, it's the context. I have DB. I can say that db.products. load. Notice there's no load event. Why? I'm missing a reference. I'm missing a reference to using system data entity. I need to put that in. When I do that, now the load works. And I had another requirement, use system data entity, right? Okay, but loading is not what I need. I need, and this is really cool, right? You can see how this works, right? I need my binding source, which is called my product binding source dot data source, right? I have to make that equal to, right, my db dot products, and then, now this is really interesting, to binding source, right? And again, it is to list. Let me see if I can find this thing. I might need another reference to this. Oh no, I don't. It's dot local dot to binding list. Now you might, what? Okay, where'd you get that, Tom? All right. Well, two things. My product binding source is connected to my data grid view. I don't have to explicitly say, hey, data grid view, I want you to point the source to this. Here I'm loading the data. Here I'm saying that the data source is going to be the data that I loaded, and I'm going to change it into a binding list. I'm binding the data to my table. That's what I'm doing. And now when I run this thing, if I try it, you're going to see that I get my data. That's the entity framework way. That's the way you're going to get full marks for connecting to the entity framework in assignment 5. I'm recording it. You can use it. I'm telling you what to do. Here's some problems though. Look at this. RAM underscore type. RAM underscore size. That's pretty ugly, right? So maybe what I want to do here is I can go into my data grid view design. So I want to kind of go into edit columns, and I can go through the columns, and you can see that the display name can be different than the actual name. So example would be, this is some work you have to do, guys. I recommend, right? So here's RAM type. Don't display it as RAM type, right? You can make it display as anything you want. Here's your header text. Let's make this RAM type, right? Like this, and press OK. And you can see now that it's going to change what it says up here to a nice name. All right? It won't do it by itself. You have to tell it to do it, right? Same thing with edit columns. Notice that edit columns, right? We don't want sort mode to be automatic. We want sort mode to be not sortable, right? Because remember, we ran into that issue last time that if we make it allow sortability, it'll crash my code, right? So if I go automatic, actually, let's try this automatic for a second and press OK. And if I press, let's try it. Let's see what happens when I sort. So I go up here and I sort now, and hey, look, sorting works. How come sorting works now? Because the way we're connecting to our database. Haha. Because we're using entity framework, it doesn't matter. We don't, not yet. Not yet. Because right now, I'm not doing that whole give me the index of the thing that I'm clicking. Once I start clicking on an index and getting the index of the current row, then I get my error. Because if I click on this, the index of the current row changes and it throws my my reference off, right? That's what causes it. But yes, that's the way you do it. You go in here, and what you'd want to do here is when you go in, and if I edit columns, you'd have to you'd have to remove the sortability from all the columns if you're going to go do. That's one fix. The other one is to do it by code. So product ID is the same thing. Maybe my product ID shouldn't be called product ID. Maybe it should be like product ID, right? Make it so it's nicer. Right? You can make it nice, right? So you have to go through. There's some work for you guys to do. All right, other things in this particular form. Other things for the form. Notice that it also has a next button and a cancel button. What does the next button and the cancel button do? So if I go back up to the form for order form, sorry, my select form. My select form says that I have a cancel button that terminates the application, and the next button goes to my product info form. Okay. And look what it says here. It says that this button next is going to be grayed out until the user has selected a row. Right? So That's a thing. I want you to have nothing selected at the beginning. That's new, right? Not everything is selected. You want nothing to be selected. So whatever it is, no rows selected at the beginning. I want the user to select the rows. Otherwise, the data grid view will allow you to go through and you might select the wrong product, right? So we need two things, a cancel button and a next button. Now, I'm not going to make the next button. You can make that, but I'll make the cancel button so it shuts things down. I'm going to go to my toolbox. I'm going to go to Windows Forms. I'm going to go to Buttons, all Windows Form button, drag and drop that button. And let's make this the cancel button. So I'm going to go down to my Solution Explorer, properties, what I really want for the button. And I'm going to change the name of the button. Let's make it so it's nice. Should be the cancel button. Cancel button. Ugh. Oh. Good. And it should say cancel, right? Cancel. And let's put the button in the bottom right hand corner, right somewhere like this. Maybe it's supposed to be over here, because cancel should be here and then next is there, right? And let's double click on the cancel button and we'll make application exit, which is what it should do, right? Application exit. So now I have a way of exiting my application. Yay! And if I run this thing, you can see now that I have a cancel button that cancels and exits, right? And you can continue to do those things for all the rest of your forms. However, I should mention that there's some stuff that you can't do right now, right? And I also gave you another link online. If you look up online, there's another link that I gave you, right? Which is this one, Visual Studio Power Packs, right? Please download this, Visual Studio Power Packs. It actually gives you an executable to download, this one, vbpowerpacks.exe. Why are you laughing? Okay, I mean, you didn't do it yet, or you don't? I'm too fast for you. What's wrong? Huh? Oh, she's restarting. It's a slow computer. All right. Well, so VB Power Packs. What do I need it? Well, let me show you. When you download it in my Visual Studio, I'll clean mine up. Okay, but I've already done it. But I'll show you what it looks like. It actually looks like this. It gives me some additional stuff. Let me just reset. So I'm going to right click here and I'm going to reset my toolbox to its original content. So it's going to get rid of that stuff. It's gone. See? It's gone. I want to add it in. So when you download your VB Power Packs, by the way, in order for you to do that, you have to restart or close down Visual Studio and opening it up again, right? So I want to right click and I want to add a tab. And I'm going to call this Power Packs. And what I want to do is I want to right click here and I want to choose items. So when I download my VB Power Packs, I can just simply go VB and then POW, VB PO actually. And then I have access to this, line shape, oval shape, print form, and rectangle shape. I want those four things. That's where they are, right? Yeah, it makes it nice, right? So what this does is it allows me to draw stuff on my form, which is wonderful. If I can draw stuff on my form, awesome, right? If I press OK, what it does is it adds those things in my form, and it allows me to do print form, which allows me to do a print preview, right? Which is kind of cool. So that's those shapes. So what are the shapes? Why do I need these shapes? Because take a look at what I'm asking you to do on your order form. Look at this. And if you were trying to copy me and you're like, okay, I want to make this line right here. How do you make that line? There's a couple ways to do this. You could use a group box and you make it very small, right? And then it looks like a line, right? Or you can just draw a line with your line tool, which I just gave you, right? That's why I gave it to you. In fact, let's make this form a little bit more. Let's work on this form now. Okay, that's the next form I want to work on. Let's do this one. So I want to go back to my Visual Studio. I want to go back to my Solution Explorer. I want to go back to my programs.cs. And I'm not going to continue to work on your select form. You can finish that. I did most of it for you already. I even showed you how to connect to it and do the selection index. And the other project that I did last week was this again, right? But what I want to do here is I want to start, instead of my select form, I want to start order form. Let's start order form first, just so we can work with it. So again, I don't have navigation yet. All I have is I want to look at one form, fix it, go to the next one, fix it, now connect them all together, and then we're good to go for assignment 5 or lab 11, right? All right, so let's see this. So if I run this now, my order form you'll see is blank, and it has these controls. This is not good, because if you look at my order form, it has no controls, right? So let's go back and fix that. So I'm going to go to Solution Explorer. I'm going to double click on my order form, which is going to bring me this. And I know that I want to take away some stuff. First, I want to make my font size, just keep it the same. I want to keep my font size at 12. Again, it's kind of like the minimum size I recommend. I don't think you should make your stuff harder to see. 800 by 600 is the form size. I want to start my form in the center screen. This is all regular stuff that I made you do. And then I want to take care of my control box. My control box will be gone. False. Also, notice in my order form, guys, that I also have this menu. And some people ask me, like, where do I get the menu configuration? Well, it's here. Look. Here's the menu configuration for order form. So just use this menu configuration. Let's make that. So again, I'm going to go to menus and toolbars. I'm going to go to my menu strip and add it in there. And then I'm going to call this the order form menu strip, because that's the right name. Order form menu strip. Some people just call it menu, which is fine too. So here's my order form menu strip. I have this, and you know what? I'm not going to type in all those things. Look what I need. I need a file, edit, and help. File, edit, and help. So instead of file, edit, and help by itself, I want to do it automatically. So I'm going to go to this little smart arrow here and choose Insert Standard Items, which does this. And then I can get rid of tools. I don't need tools. And under help, I don't need contents, index, search, or this little line, this divider. I need about though. Under edit, I can get rid of everything. Under file, I can get rid of new, open, the divider, save as, and the divider. I need print, and I need exit. So I need those two things. Because notice it says just print and exit and back. And then under edit, I can put a back button, back. And if I want to, I can make it look exactly the same by going in here and pressing ampersand B for back. And if I really want to, I can press Control B to go back. So here, instead of text back, my shortcut keys, right, I can make it so that it is Control and B to make me go back. Control B, Control P, and this can be Control X if I really want to, or Control, I don't know. Make sense? Okay, so I got my little form here. And, okay, cool. Well, I want to make my print work. And I gave you guys power packs, right? What I can do is I can take this print form from the power packs and drop it onto my form, which gives me this new print form control, right? Now, this is not required for assignment 5, but some people ask me, how do I do print anyway, if I want to print? This is how. It's the easier way. I want to configure this thing, so I want to go to my print form and change the name to product print form, because that's what I'm doing. So product print form. Now here's something by default. It says the print action is print to printer. I can always change the print action to print to preview, but I'm going to show you how to do this. Right? There's also print to file. But I'm going to show you how to do this print to preview thing with code. Right? So again, what I want to do is in my form, when I go File, Print, I want to print to preview. So double click on Print. It's going to take you here. And in my print tool, I have my print form, product print form, dot print action is equal to, and it gives me something called system.drawing.printing.print action. Erg, what ugliness. I want to include this as a reference, right? It makes sense. Systems.drawing, right? Let's do that. I got system.drawing.printing. Let's put it here. Using system.drawing.printing. I think it's important to put in there. And then it's print action. I can do print action dot and then print a preview. So that I set the print action. I say, hey, print preview now. That's I'm configuring it when I click this button. I could also do it through the properties menu, like I showed you, right? But I want to do it explicitly here. And then I can say product print form dot print, right? Which actually it creates the print action. Let's try this out and see what happens. So I want to press start, and then I want to go file print, and it does this. It's a beautiful thing. Look, it actually gives me a print preview of what the form is going to look like, and it's nice. If I want to, if I click this little button here, it'll actually print. Right, it'll actually print too. Yeah. So I don't want to do that. I'm going to click X. And then I need the exit to work, so let's make that exit work. So again, stop. And again, what I can do is I can go to my order form and double click on the exit, which is going to make this application exit. If I can spell application to that would be good. And now if you start it, we can go file exit, and it works. And notice also that I can draw stuff, right, on my form. I can go to my order form now, and I can go to my toolbox. Here's my toolbox, right? And now because I have my line shape, now I got to tell you that this Visual Basic Power Packs is from a very much older version of Visual Studio 2010 to 2012, all right? However, it still works great, but you have to be patient. You have to be patient with it. It'll work on 19.2. You have to be patient with it. So what I mean is, if I drag a line that's in here and I make the line bigger, like I redo this line, sometimes you get some weird artifacts, like in your form. So just be wary of that. But what you can do is with the line, I can draw the line anywhere I want, right? So I can make the line straight, or I can make the line curved, or whatever. I can also use a rectangle. That's fine too. But you can see that there's a line here, and if I go to my properties, it's called line shape, right? Maybe I can even call it divider line, because remember I'm trying to do maybe something that looks like this line, right? Make sense? Yeah, so maybe I'll call it the total line shape, total line. Total line is okay. I like that. Here's my total line. I can actually configure it, the line. I can configure the X1, Y1, and X2, Y2 position. This should be the same. Y2 and Y1 and Y2 should be 150, the same level, but these are going to be different. And I can also say that I can specify the border width. I can say that the border width is 5, right? And if I don't like border style, which is solid, I can also change the border style to, I don't know, dash, right? You can make it whatever you like. Lots of control here. That's why I recommend the line tool. To make it so that you can enhance the way your form looks, okay? And of course, this line would not be a dash, it would be solid, and it would probably be positioned somewhere on the right-hand side when you're going to do your calculations, right? Somewhere down in here. The only other thing that I want to do with you in this form is go back to the form. We need a cancel button again, but I already have one. Remember I talked about this before? If I go to select form, if I go to select form, let's go to select form. Here's my select form. If I click on my cancel button, right? So click on my cancel button and copy it. And if I go to my order form and I paste it, it's going to be perfect. Here's my cancel button. The only thing that won't happen in my cancel button, right, is there's no code, and I can just put application exit. But here's something. I could do this, right? Or I could use the same exit tool strip menu item to point to. Shared event handler, right? Which is what I really want to do. So again, I'm going to go back to my form. So let's go back to my form. And here's my design for my order form. And I'm going to definitely have to take it away the hard way. Properties. I'm going to click on this thing and then get rid of this. So I don't want its own event handler. I want to point it to the exit toolstrip menu item click event. And now if you look at the code, you can see that that other event is gone. And I'm only using one. And if I click play, I have, click cancel and it's closing. If I press play and I press file, exit, and it's closing, all those things are good. So I'm not going to do all of the forms for you. That doesn't make sense. I mean, I might as well just do your whole assignment. But you can see what I'm doing. I start putting elements in there that I need. I start planning out what my thing is going to look like. Sometimes it's best to start with just buttons. Get all your buttons going. Make sure you can go from one form to the other. They're all 12. I'm going from one form to the other, moving one form one way or the other way. I'll do my splash screen with the timer and all that stuff that we talked about before. Those are all things, almost like a culmination project, this thing is. So the assignment is almost everything. By the way, multi-form, right, that we're doing in this one. The first assignment was not multi-form. Not really. It was multi-form if you want to get a bonus for the splash screen. But this is multi-form. Why? Because guaranteed on your test, multi-form. You're not going to do just one form on your test. I'm going to give you multiple forms, right? Okay. So that's really it for the entity framework and how to connect to it. However, there's one more slide on the entity framework which I would like you to look at, which is this one. So what this does is it tells you, and I think there's only one error, which is this error. I forgot to do this. On this slide, it basically says this. It says, okay, new student is equal to new student. I can create a new student here, like we can do. I can basically add to the database and then just DB save changes. If I want to change the database, this is the way to do it, right? If I want to read from the database, I can say, okay, for every product and db.products, order by my product ID, let's say, and then select that product, and I can have a thing. Now for the search form, you open it up, you use using var db is equal to product or dollar computers context or whatever you called it, right? And then in there you can basically use link as a query when you press on that search to search through and then reload whatever's in the data grid view with your search. And then it'll isolate only the stuff that you're looking for because you're ordering by whatever the thing is, where the brand is equal to Dell or the thing is equal to whatever, right? And you can search by different things. If you say I want to search by brand, you can put different search criteria. Searching means search by everything. What are you searching for? That's hard, right? Yeah, so maybe you want to say brand search or platform search or whatever, did different searches, and then so you can search by different things. Also, instead of searches, maybe you want to do a pull down. You pull down and then it sorts it by that thing, right? And so just like we do on Amazon, if you order from Amazon, you say, oh, I want our checkboxes. I want to check this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. So I want to have my brand is Dell, my memory is 16, my whatever it is, and then what happens is you can use all those criteria when you're done. Every time you click on the criteria, it reorders the stuff in the data grid view to only have the stuff that you want. That's the way to do it. Yeah. Yeah, and so think of that, like instead of doing a search bar may not be the one you think you want. Maybe what you want to do is you want to use the checkbox to check all those things. Yeah. Right, and that's what you want. Yeah, and that's what you want. You want the same thing for this one. So we're almost like we're making a store, guys and girls, right? Remember that the stuff we're mirroring here, you can do on the web as well, right? Because Windows Forms and web forms are the exact same. You can actually do web forms with Visual Studio as well, not just Windows Forms. And it's the exact same controls. Data grid view, right? It's got different kind of controls, all the same thing. You can use Visual Studio to create your forms with C#. And that is where the .NET framework, using the .NET framework, instead of .NET framework, you're using .NET Core, which is the subject of COMP123, which is coming for you. All right? Okay. I think I've covered entity framework. I know I'm not supposed to, but I want to start with unit testing a little bit, and then I will do another little thing on intro to unit testing next week. But I'm going to close this down for a second and open up the other PowerPoint on unit testing. It's called test-driven development because think about this. Right now, so far, all we've been doing is we have a requirement, we make a method. We have a requirement, we make a class, right? And sometimes, you know, we make methods that don't make any sense, right? So what we do here, instead of making it that way, is we do the other way around. Now, test-driven development is not what I've been promoting. I've been promoting this. Make your user interface. First design it, then make it. Doesn't work. Make it work, right? Second thing. Then refactor. Third thing. Okay? Test-driven development is not like that. Test-driven development is like this. You're failing. Make it not fail anymore. Refactor. What I mean by that is, okay, so I want to, as a user, I have a user story. As a user, I'd like a form in your mind. That's how you should write it. I'd like a form, you know, to give me a menu. Okay, so I want to go to my menu form. I want to test to see if the menu form is there. Right away, I test to see if my menu form is there. Of course I'm going to fail. There's no menu form, right? So I say, well, go to the menu form, and then in the menu form, I want to go, you know, take me to the start menu. But of course I'm going to fail. So first I fail. And why do I want to fail first? Because I can't test unless I know that I can fail. How do I know that the test is actually passing unless I know that it can fail? If I know that it can fail, then I know that I can make it pass. If it's passing, I don't know if I can make it fail. Maybe I'm always going to pass every single time, right? So first we make it fail, then we make it pass, then we refactor. That's the way that test-driven development works. And really what it is it's a different way of thinking about it. When we do unit testing, I want you to think about it as each unit is a testable component, right? So I have some kind of method, and I want to be able to test that method, right? Has to be testable. Hey, here's a question for you. Is a method that returns void testable? What do you think? Not really. How can you test that? It's void. It's not going to give you any feedback, right? So methods that are testable are not void, number one. However, you can have void methods in your project, right? And the void methods are like this, an event handler. Because if I go back to my code, I cannot change this event handler, exit tool strip menu item click, to not being void. Why? Delegate. My delegate requires that this particular event handler is void. That's the pattern. Void, return type, an object that's a sender, and some kind of event args. I need those three things. If I don't have those three things, then it breaks the delegate responsibility. Think about this as almost like I've made a handshake or a contract. Remember, the delegates are almost like interfaces in some ways, right? And I make a contract that has to adhere to this kinds of thing, the return type, the different kinds of parameters, and all those things. And if I change this return type from void to something else, breaks the contract, right? So here's what I could do. I want to be able to test that I have a connection to the database, right? So this is a test that I want to do, right? So what I can do is I can test to see that my select form has a connection to the database. If I have a connection to the database, right? Fantastic, right? It's passed. If I don't have a connection to the database, boo, it's failed, right? So how do I test that? How do I create a test for this? So whenever I do a test, first of all, let's go back to the PowerPoint to go through it. Remember that what I said was unit testing is all about little testable units. Test-driven development is like I do the test first, and that's how I make my methods, right? I don't have methods that I test. I make the test to create the methods. It's a different way of doing things. Why is that? Because guess what? If I can make a method that doesn't exist pass, I've created the method. So I'm actually making a test, creating the method from the test, and then making it pass and then refactoring it, which is perfect because it's passing the test that it has to pass, right? Whereas if I do it the other way around, I make my method, then I try and test it. But yeah, okay, but there's a chance it might fail, right? Later on. Yeah.
By Unix, let's say each label.
Each component.
The Unix and each
No. Each component, which is a chunk of code, usually method, and to make a testable unit or a testable component, the method has to do one thing, That's the best way. So it only returns one type, Boolean or a string or whatever. And if your method does more than one thing, it's not a good test method. It has to be doing one thing, one main responsibility. Actually, it adheres to the single responsibility principle, right? Which means it doesn't have anything else but the single responsibility principle. And if it goes back to that, if you actually look at solid design, single responsibility principle is the first one, the first design principle of solid. There's actually these different kinds of acronyms. Remember, one is solid and the other one is dry. Do not repeat yourself, right? Single responsibility principle means that every method has one thing that it can do. Cumbersome, because methods might be really small. Testable, really good. The downside of using test-driven development is it takes a while. The good side is you have good intentions. You know what's happening. You can decouple things. Your methods can be broken up into smaller methods, right? That I can test. Testable chunks, basically, is what I'm doing, right? My debugging is way through the roof because I have different parts of my program that I can debug, right? And way more efficient code at the end because when I refactor, I sit there and go, well, you know, maybe there's a better way to do this. And I actually analyze each component so I can refactor it, right? We do this red, green refactor stuff. So we start with red, fail, green, pass, and then gray refactor. And these are the steps that I talked about. And every time we do a test, we set it up like this. First, we have an arrange step. The arrange step, what it does is we say, okay, I want to initialize objects or variables. I want to declare the variable type. In my act phase of the test, I want to invoke the method. So I want to call the method that I want to test, right? And then in my assert phase, I use an assertion method that says, hey, I want to assert, you know what assert means? I want to make sure, I want to ensure, that's what assert means, that these two things are equal. I want to ensure that it's returning a Boolean. I want to ensure that, you know, this is not equal. I want to ensure that this is false, whatever it is going to be. And you can do that. And once you do that, those are the 3 steps you need for every test that you do. Okay? Okay, details. And we're going to do this again on Friday. Because for you guys, you're going to start test-driven development on Friday officially, right? Details. How do I set up a test? So let's go back to my Visual Studio. And inside my Visual Studio, I'm going to go to my Solution Explorer. In order for me to set up a test, to do test-driven development, and to do unit testing in general, right, I need to have another project. There's 2 projects. There's your application project, and then there's your test project, okay? So let's set up a test project. I'm going to go to my solution. I'm going to right-click on my solution, and I'm going to go to Add, New Project. And this time, instead of making it a Windows Forms application, I'm going to click Test, and I'm going to click Unit Testing Project, right? And we're going to call this again, you can call it the $, Computer Test Project or whatever you want. If I did that, it would look like this. $, Computers, Unit Test Project, and click OK. And what this does is it makes a brand new project in here. And here's what happens. When you make a project, it comes automatically with a unit test class. I can have multiple unit test classes, and each unit test class can have multiple test methods, right? So here's how it goes. My unit test class must have this attribute that says test class. Attributes are in square brackets, right? Also think about them as decorators, right? The test class, the square brackets, decorates the class below it and says that this class, I'm setting it, or I'm configuring the class, right, to point to this class is a test class, which means in my test menu, when I run all tests, it'll actually trigger this class to run if there's a test class. Inside the test class, for every method that I want to test with, I must have a decorator on the method, or an attribute, that's what they're called. An annotation is another thing they're called, annotations, that is test method. It has to say test method. The test method, these are best practices. The test method should be called something that's related to what you want to do. For example, confirm that, or test that there's a connection to the database for select form. That's how long the method could be. The name of the method should be very descriptive. right? So again, example might be, this is my first test method, let's write it. I'm going to rename this thing, it's going to be test that select form has connection to the database. So again, I'm going to go here and rename test that select form has connection to database, DB. That's what the method is called. Why is the method called that? Why can't it be just test method 1? Because what if I'm testing every method and, you know, I'm going to need a lot of different methods and I need them to be descriptive. So if it fails, then I know that my test that select form has connected to database failed. That's the test that failed, right? A good example of this is this. If I run the test now, what happens? Test run, all tests. What this does is if you run all tests, it's going to bring up Test Explorer, right? And what Test Explorer does is it goes through each of the methods and, I passed. Why? Because I'm not asserting anything. I didn't do anything with the method, right? We need to make it fail, right? That's the first thing. That's why I told you, fail first, then pass. Otherwise, you're going to see all these screen tests. By the way, I know a professor who works at U of T, who the way he does all of his tests, practical tests, is he gives you a test rig, test project. And he says, he writes the test project for you, all this stuff. And then you press the button. And if you fail, any of the methods fail, right, you lose marks for each of the methods that fail, right, the test methods, right? Now, here's the thing about this.
Professor is not dumb, right?
It's not dumb. No, he's a good guy.
Thank you.
However, so there's a problem with this. One thing is, I like it because it's good, it's clean, it's quick, right? It's almost like a true-false multiple choice, really, at the end of the day. You follow what the output's supposed to be. If the output matches, you're good to go. However, what about the creativity? What about if my method doesn't exactly return that? It's going to fail. So what he's forcing you to do is he's forcing you to make sure you pass, right? And there's two ways to think about this. One, give your students the test rig. Two, don't give your students the test rig. Test after, right?
Yeah.
If you don't give your students the test rig, you test after and press the button, then you're going to see a lot of reds, right?
That's a fact.
And then if it's red, right, then it's like a true-false multiple choice. But in the thing is, he does tell you in the exam questions that this is what it has to output. This is your output. Here, he describes everything. It's not a trap. But the thing is, making it do that. You know, if you fail, do that. It's just, for him, for marking, it's 2 seconds. Press the button, and if you have all your methods in your entire program, it just, you know how many pass or how many fail. Simple as that. Here's another really good reason for test-driven development before I go into details, right? What if I write a method and it passes, and then I write another method and that method ends up failing afterwards? That can happen too, because one method can influence another method, right? So sometimes you run all tests because the new test that you ran passed, but the old test failed. Uh-oh, what happened? Because now I made a bug. That's what it is. I created a bug in my program that failed this other method again. And you wouldn't be able to find that in just, it may not be a runtime thing. It could be a logic thing. That's what test-driven development helps you out with, because you're looking for specific output. What's my output? All right, so I want to make this thing fail. So first of all, I need to do this. I need to access my other project. Question, do I have access to my other project? It lives in a different folder, and it lives in a completely different namespace. Look at my namespace right now. My namespace is $computer unit test project. Do I have access to it? No. In fact, not only do I have not access to it, I can never get access this way. I have to create a reference. So in references in my test project, I'm going to right click and I'm going to add a reference. And what this is going to say is, I want to add a reference to my project, this project, my solution, this project here, section A example. I want to press OK. And what this does is it adds a reference to my test project, so I have access to the original project. That's number one. Second, I want to go through my process. So again, remember what we have? What's the steps? Arrange, act, assert. So here's my arrange. Then I have my act. Then I have my assert. Right? When I arrange, I have to set up variables or initialize variables to connect. Remember that I have to instantiate my form, right? So I can set up a form. So my form would be called select form. So I could say select form, right? And then I could say select form, right? Here's my select form. But it says, hey, you don't have access to select form, so I got to go here and press using this one, right? And now I have access to my select form. And in my act, I'm going to say select form is equal to new select form. I create my select form, right? And I'm going to say that I'm going to assert that select form dot. Oh no, but this, remember, I have to fail. I have to assert that select form dot is connected to database is connected to database, right? I want to be able to do this. If this, I want to do this. I want to assert that. I want to assert. So again, you can go assert that. Again, you can say it. Here's the assertion: not equal, not same, equals, is true, is false, right? I want to say is true. I want to assert that it's true that. Here's my condition. Take this whole thing and cut it and put it in there. Take away this semicolon and do this, right?
Select.
And then it's select form. I gotta write it good. Here's my select form. And now is connected to database says that it doesn't exist, right? So now, if I was to run this thing, so if I say tests, run all tests, right? It's not selected database. It says, okay, there's a build error. So I can't do that. I can't just like not have a thing, right? However, I can click on this and go here and then go generate method select form is connected to database. Let's do that. Okay. Well, where did it go? Where's that method? Is it there? Let's go to my select form. So select form, I'm going to go to my select form here. Here's my select form, and then let's take a look at my F7. Did I make an is connected to database? I did. Here's my is connected to database, public boolean, and it's going to throw an exception. I want to return false, right? Guess why? It's going to fail. I'm making it fail, right? First make it fail. And so when I go back, I'm going to go back to my $computers unit test, and I want to go test, run all tests. I want to see it fail, please. There are build errors. Okay, cool. What's the build error? Let's take a look. No. It says a reference assembly system Windows Forms is missing. Oh, okay. That's another thing that's wrong. So system Windows Forms, this thing here needs to be in my test project. Into this thing. Because it doesn't know what a form is. Right? I don't know what I'm testing yet. Let's run it now. Let's run all tests again. System Windows Forms. How come this is not working? Right? It says using directive is unnecessary. Alright. Well, let's see what it says here. Let's see why it's unnecessary. I don't think so. Remove unnecessary usings. Well, I made select form. I don't know what it's talking about. Let's try this again. Let's go tool, tests, run, all tests. Okay, errors. It says the namespace forms does not exist in the namespace systems Windows. Here's form. How come? Well, I need an assembly reference. That's what I'm really missing. So if I go here and I click here, there's actually another thing I can do. It says remove unnecessary, but I actually need an assembly reference to this form thing, right? And the way to do that is actually to come in to do it down here. This is the way to do it, because what this does is it says, hey, I have a suggestion. Add system Windows Forms to the assembly, right? Which actually adds it in here into references. Okay, now I think we're better. Let's try this out again. So I'm going to go test and then run all tests, and you can see that it should fail, right? Red, right? Now we've done the first part, fail. Now we need to make it pass. How do we make it pass to make sure that we're connected to the database? How do we do that? So now we're going to go back to this. This is the process. We're going to go back to this. We've made it fail. It doesn't do anything, right? I'm going to go back to my select form. Here it is. And here's my is connected to database. It automatically returns false, which means it's always going to fail, right? And what I need to do is make it so that I can prove that it's connected. How do I make it prove that it's connected to database? Well, it's kind of a weird test, but the DB, if my DB is not connected, right, then I know that if there's no reference, right? If I haven't loaded my my stuff, let's say for example, I haven't loaded my this DB products load, because this load actually returns a iQueryable load event. That's what it does, and this is a data set, and here's a DB. But the DB, if my DB is not, there's no context to the DB, if it's not connected to anything, then it would fail. Like this would be nothing, right? So I guess it's hard to prove. How do I prove that my thing is connected to database? Maybe it's not a great test. Maybe it's like, maybe my test should be has loaded data source. Has loaded data source. Maybe that's the better method. So let's rename this thing. So rename, this is where we come back to. So has loaded data source. And we'll say data source. Alright, now when I've done this here, then we go back to my test application, and we can see that my unit test, it says had loaded data source. This should also be called test that the selected form has loaded data source. Loaded data source. It should be exactly what I'm trying to test, right? And then what I want to do is inside of my application, which is my select form.cs, right in here, I've got to make sure that this part here is inside here, right? And this part here calls the other part, has loaded data source, right? And we're going to say if has loaded data source is true, then do something, right? Or maybe I'll test that it's not doing something. If not has loaded data source, my select form, then I want to do a message box dot show, and I want to do something that says data source, sure, not loaded, error, right? And then message box buttons dot OK, and then my message box icons dot error. So I want to kind of show an error, a message box that has an error if I have a problem, if it didn't load, right? Okay, so that's what, if it hasn't loaded, then is it? And then when this does is, okay, has loaded data source, it needs a return type. So we check to see if the the data source is not empty. So I can say that if product finding data source, this part right here, dot data source here, if this by whatever reason is not equal to null, right? Then what I want to return is true. Otherwise, out of here, if it somehow gets to here, return false. And that's, my friends, is the test that I can do, because now it's testable. Look, I'm returning a Boolean if it's loaded or not loaded, right? Here, I'm checking to see if it hasn't loaded, and it's going to produce an error for me, right? I could also put this in a try catch and all that stuff. But now I can test it, right? I can test it, and it should pass. Let's try it. So if I go to, again, my test, and if I run all tests, let's see if it passes now. So build succeeded, and it's building, and what we were looking for is in my test explorer, when it comes through, we want to see that this test passes now. And if it doesn't pass, which it didn't pass, right? Here. How come it didn't pass?
Should be inside an else. Yeah, return false.
No, this is okay, but it's the test that I ran, right? The test, if I go my unit test again, right? My test says, assert that's true, that my select form has loaded data source. It failed, right? Why did it fail? Because my application never ran. My application didn't run, right? And I'm trying to load the data source, right? So again, what I want to do is start my application. Here's my application, my order form, right? And then what I want to do is test. Sometimes you want to do something else, but the problem is I can't test while it's running. I can't. I got to do more setup, and we're going to talk about that next week. In order for me to test a Windows form application, it's going to fail because when I access this thing, when I access it, so I'm trying to arrange and act, I gotta almost like make my application start going. I need to do that whole program stuff because it hasn't gone yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't ran my whole program, so therefore nothing's loaded, and so therefore it's gonna fail. And this is a good test of it failed, right? Make sense? Guys, thank you so much for sticking around. We'll do more on Friday, more unit testing. And by the way, unit testing is good for Java, C#, JavaScript, iOS programming, Android programming, name it. We use test-driven development everywhere. So it's really useful. Okay, see you guys on Friday, and then thank you for staying.
But
What time is this section
extra time, like,
start on Friday?
8:30
8:30. 8 a.m.
a.m. Yeah.